In this video, we're going to talk about measures of relative standing, or measures of position. So we're looking at the same data set of 50 people who were asked about how many siblings they had. And in a previous video, we already found the mean and the standard deviation to be what is listed here. And so we established the fact that this standard deviation is very large, and we know that our data is skewed. And so the mean might not be the best measure of center for this data set. And so what we would like to do is use the median to describe the center. But then standard deviation really has no meaning when we're talking median, because the standard deviation by definition is how far away on average each data point is from the mean. And so what we want to do instead is we want other measures of spread to measure this data set that go along with the median. So what we have is something called the 5-number summary, and that 5-number summary includes the minimum, the maximum. Let's do quartile 1, or first quartile. We have the median, we have the third quartile, and then we have the maximum. So this is the 5-number summary. And so we can calculate each of these, and we using built-in formulas in Excel, because we're looking at the original data. So there is a formula for each of these. The formula for the minimum is called min. And so I'm just going to find the min of my data, and that is 0. Then I'm going to find the first quartile. So there's a formula called quartile.inc. I'm going to use that one. Not EXC, but inclusive. And so this takes 2 arguments. First, I have to select the data, and then I have to tell it which quartile I want. So I want the first quartile, which you can see it's written right here. Excel's actually going to find me the 25th percentile, which is a little bit different than the first quartile, and I'll try to talk about the difference between those two. But for this course, it's not really going to make much of a difference, and I think in general, it's not going to make much of a difference. So then we have the median, which I had already calculated in the previous video to be 1. And you can see the first quartile and the median are the same because there's just so many values in this data set that are actually 1. There's so many people that said they had 1 sibling that the 25th percentile and the 50th percentile are the same number. And then we can use the quartile function again to find our third quartile, and then we have our maximum, which is max, and again. So there's our 5-number summary. Now, how is this 5-number summary useful? Well, if I were to select the original data and insert a box and whisker plot, okay, what we're going to see here is that our minimum is 0, and so it's actually on this bar here. I think if we put our minimum as -1, we can see it a little bit better. Okay, so we can see our whisker ends here at the bottom at 0, and that was my min. This box starts at 1. That's my first quartile. Normally we would have the bottom section of the box, and that bottom section would start at the first quartile and end at the median. But since the median and the first quartile are the same number here, there aren't 2 sections of the box. You can see the top of the box is my third quartile, and then we have our max way out here. Now, how are these other values, how is it determined that these are outliers and that this is the max that is not an outlier? We'll talk about that in another video later on. For now, what you should know is that there's something called the interquartile range. And the interquartile range is the distance between the beginning of the box and the end of the box. This is known as the IQR for short. So to find the interquartile range, which there is no built-in function for, I'm going to take Q3 and subtract Q1. And so in this case, it's just 1, and this is the same value. This is just for short. And you can see the width of the box here is actually 1. So the distance between the third quartile and the first quartile is called the interquartile range. And this is sort of our measure of spread when it comes to data that is not symmetric. So we're going to choose the median as our measure of center and our interquartile range as our measure of spread. And here we have the number of siblings. And I only need a vertical axis here because there is nothing along the horizontal axis. There's no data there. There's just a picture. And so this is a number of siblings. All right, so that's how we calculate the 5-number summary. If we were given the original data, we just have a min, a quartile function, a median, another quartile function, a max function, and then we can subtract Q1 from Q3 to find our interquartile range.